Spanish Inquisition, which was
Well, the term Inquisition came from the term Inquisitio, that meant the Roman law to any court process. But later in the 15th and 16th century, it changed its meaning to be a Roman Catholic Church that fined and executed or tortured the heretics.
I'm gonna talk about its historical background. Okay, so it was founded by King and Queen of Spain, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella in 1478. In that moment, the freedom of religion didn't exist in Spain or its territories, which means that the monarchy didn't allow people to have their own religion and having their own beliefs. The monarchy and the church wanted to ensure that the Catholic converts really follow the Catholic law. This means that people from other religion, like Islam or Judaism, converted to Catholicism. And this is why they were persecuted and interrogated, and the major part was killed. Death estimates are in the range of 35,000 to 50,000.
They followed a procedure, which was first the accusation, in which they read the list of histories you have done, and they would encourage the citizens to confess their crimes. And then it was a detention, which was when they kept the criminal or the prisoners in some cells, and they would not tell them where they were and how many years, days, or weeks have they been there. And then it was the trial and sentencing, and it was mostly all trials were when in public, and they would torture the criminal, so they would confess, and if they confess their crimes, well, they most of the time use it with the auto de fe, which was that they confessed all their sins and crimes in public, and sometimes they were sentenced to death, and very rarely times they were free, but they had them years and a lot of time torturing them, so they would confess, and sometimes they would keep them just because they were not Christians or something like that. And they used torture methods, which...
Well, I'm going to explain the torture method. They not only torture them physical, but also psychological. There are several methods. Here I will explain some of them. The impalement. It was used with a sharp pole where they have to cross all the body of the victim, and in sometimes they forced him to sit on that pole so their own weight would go down and the pole would go through there. Then the soul torture. This was common to kill him. He was hanged, inverted, and they started to saw him, and all the people could see this torture. The rack. This was very common. It was a wooden table where they tied your ankles and wrists, and they can dislocate all your bones because they start to pull yourself. The tub, you were inside a tub full of milk, and they pour you some honey so the bees and flies could eat you, and because of the time you were there, you started to be in your own poop. Then the coffin torture was a cage that made that all the public could see you were a heretic and the Inquisition take you. You were there many times until you were dead, and in many cases the cage was too little for the person. Then the chair is basically a chair full of spikes, and you sit there and you start to bleed, and then maybe you will be dead. Chinese water torture, that makes crazy the victim first than hurting him physically, because it's a drop of water that came to your head one and one until your head starts to be hurt and it starts like to open. Then the water torture was a method that made the people drink lots and lots of water in a certain and little time, so all their digestive system will be off. And the guillotine was commonly used for the victims that accept their guiltiness, and it will be dead like a little bit faster than the other tortures. We're going to talk about important people.
I'm going to talk about important people involved with the Inquisition. So there was this guy called Tomás de Torquemada. He was nicknamed the Black Legend. He is considered one of the most evil men in the history of Earth. He had this close relationship with Queen of Spain, Queen Isabella, so he actually had a lot of power. He was named the Grand Inquisitor by the Pope that allowed him, the Pope gave him the power of defending the Catholic faith and persecuting heretics. He vended his hatred of Jews by persecuting them and making them to confess things that weren't true. So he was very evil, and yes, he was evil.
The Inquisition lasted many years, and first Joseph Bonaparte in the 1800s, he ended it because many people was not okay with it, because they had more ideas of people having different ways of thinking. But in 1813 it was restored by Ferdinand VII, and it was no more with a practical effect, because the people, the noble people, which were the ones that created this, were not anymore okay with it, and they had no generals and people to help with it. So in 1834 it came to an end. So because of the people, and they didn't have work. But we can see that this is it was a very violent, not movement, but stage. Because they would kill, and they would even kill you if you hold hands with someone or something like that. And they will not just kill you, but they will torture you with all the methods that they had. And I think it was very cruel. And the fact that the church made this was a controversy. But the people in that time would see okay, because they were eliminating people which was not in agreement with the church or didn't believe in God and things like that. So they kind of scared people, and by torturing them, and they would make them a favor if they said